Hi, I'm the man they tried to erase. My own brother walked into my workplace like he owned it, then dumped a full cup of cola on my white coat in front of everyone, just to humiliate me. He thought I'd stay quiet. He thought I'd protect the secret. But when I called his wife, my wife, she walked in, saw the stain, saw me, and dropped to her knees, begging. That's when the truth finally tore the room apart. And what came next was even worse. Do you want to know how far betrayal can go when it wears a wedding ring and shares your last name? I've spent most of my adult life learning how to stand still without disappearing. I'm in my 40s now, long past the age where I feel the need to prove myself out loud. I work in a hospital. I show up early. I leave late. I do the kind of work people only notice when something goes wrong. The white coat I wear every day isn't a costume or a symbol of status. It's a uniform of responsibility, clean, pressed, familiar. It reminds me why I'm there and who I'm supposed to be when emotions try to get in the way. I have always believed that steadiness matters. Patients notice it. Colleagues rely on it. And somewhere along the way, I learned to rely on it myself. Being calm doesn't mean being weak. At least, that's what I've told myself for years. I'm the youngest in my family. That detail tends to explain more than people realize. When you grow up as the last one, you learn early how to make yourself smaller. You wait your turn. You read the room. You sense when your voice will only complicate things. My parents didn't teach me that directly. Life did. And by the time I was old enough to question it, the habit had already settled in. My older brother never learned that lesson. He didn't need to. He's always been louder, quicker to speak, quicker to claim space. Even as kids, he could fill a room just by walking into it. Adults listened to him. Friends followed him. When he talked, people reacted. When I talked, people considered. There's a difference. I grew into mine. He leaned into his. I don't tell that story with bitterness. It's simply how things unfolded. In our family, he led with confidence. I supported with consistency. Keeping things smooth became my role. Being right mattered less than keeping the peace. Over time, silence stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like muscle memory. That morning at the hospital began like so many others, a weekday. The building already alive before most of the city had fully woken up. The low hum of conversation in the lobby, shoes moving quickly across polished floors. The scent of disinfectant mixed with coffee from the kiosk near the entrance. I paused just inside the doors, adjusted my coat, and checked my watch. Everything was on schedule. That mattered to me. I ran my hand along the edge of the coat, smoothing it without thinking. It was clean. It always was. I took pride in that. Not vanity, just care. When you wear something every day, it becomes part of your posture, part of how you carry yourself. That coat meant I belonged there. It meant I had earned my place through work, not noise. I stepped forward, ready to start the day. That's when I saw him. My brother came through the entrance like he owned the building. No pause. No hesitation. His voice reached the lobby before he did, already loud, already drawing attention. He didn't belong there. Not in that space. Not with that energy. The hospital has its own rhythm, and he disrupted it instantly. People looked up. A few heads turned. I felt it before I fully processed it. A tightening just behind my ribs. Something about the timing felt wrong. He hadn't mentioned coming by. He rarely did. And when he showed up unannounced, it was never without a reason. He scanned the room, spotted me, and smiled in a way that didn't reach his eyes. The contrast between us was sharp. Me standing there in a white coat meant for service and restraint. Him, dressed to be seen, carrying confidence like it was a weapon. His presence felt intrusive, almost careless, as if the rules of the place didn't apply to him. I considered stepping away. I could have turned down the hall. I could have delayed the interaction. No one would have blamed me. But habits run deep. Family pulls harder than logic, and part of me still believed that staying calm would keep things from escalating. I told myself it was just a quick exchange, a few words. Then I'd move on with my day. I didn't know then that this would be the last quiet moment I'd have in that lobby. It started with his voice, not a scream, not a yell, just that sharp, performative tone of someone used to being heard, used to assuming he should be. It cut through the air, clean and loud, scattering the quiet rhythm of the hospital lobby like a rock tossed into a still pond. "Where's Dr. Saint now?" he said, dragging the last word like he was playing to a crowd. "The man of the hour." I turned slowly. It was habit, not hesitation. My feet stayed planted. My hands folded loosely in front of me. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Not yet. Around us, heads began to turn. Staff paused mid-step. A nurse carrying a tray of labs slowed as she passed, eyes flicking from him to me and back again. Even the receptionist, who'd been fielding back-to-back calls, set the phone down with an almost apologetic motion, like she didn't want to miss whatever this was becoming. He raised both arms a little, like someone arriving at a party thrown in his name. "Don't look at me like that," he said, smirking. "You act like you weren't expecting me." I wasn't, and he knew it. But I didn't say that. I just watched him, calm on the outside, alert underneath. Then came the moment, the shift I hadn't seen coming. "My wife," he announced, tilting his head toward the ceiling like he was preparing for applause, "runs this entire place. CEO, head of the board, the whole 9 yards. So technically, I could be considered family to the hospital, right?" There it was. His tone wasn't just loud anymore. It was possessive. Like this space, this building, these people, had become his by association. Like he could wield his wife's position as his own badge. "She's the reason this wing got funded," he added, as if anyone had asked. "Her name's on the plaque upstairs." He leaned on the word plaque, like it proved something. Like saying it out loud gave him ownership over everything around us. And I saw it happen. The flicker in people's eyes. Confusion. Discomfort. Calculation. A few staff members subtly straightened their posture. A young tech by the elevators lowered her gaze. One of the custodians who'd been sweeping near the entrance quietly turned away. It wasn't fear, not exactly, but something close. The kind of uneasy shift that happens when someone powerful, or someone pretending to be, starts drawing lines in spaces meant to stay neutral. I stood there and let it happen. Not because I agreed, not because I was afraid, but because this is what I'd always done. Let the storm pass. Let him run out of steam. Don't feed the fire. I reached for the sleeve of my white coat, adjusting it without thinking. A centering gesture. Not for show. For me. This was my workplace, my responsibility. The hospital didn't need theatrics. It needed steadiness. And I'd spent years learning how to be that. But he didn't stop. He walked a few steps closer, into the personal space most people know better than to cross in public. His smile thinned into something sharper. "Kind of funny," he said, "how little your job really means when you think about it. I mean, who really pulls the strings here?" I didn't answer. I wasn't going to dignify that. But the words stung. Not because they were true, they weren't, but because he knew exactly where to press, where the bruise still lived. You work so hard to be respected, he went on, but respect and power aren't always the same thing, are they? The people nearby weren't just watching now. They were waiting. I felt it. The kind of tension that builds when a scene is happening and no one knows yet how far it'll go. A nurse with a clipboard hesitated at the edge of the hallway. The front desk assistant looked like she was deciding whether to step in or disappear. I told myself, stay calm, don't make this worse. But it was already worse. My brother leaned in, lowered his voice just enough so that only I could hear the next part. Funny thing is, he said, you always thought your work would earn you dignity, but turns out I just had to marry it. That one hit, not loudly, but deep, like he wanted it to. And even then, even in that moment, I kept my voice level. This is a hospital, I said quietly. You're not here for her, or for me. So why are you really here? His smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. Just stopping by, he shrugged. Checking in on family. Isn't that what good brothers do? Then he laughed, a short, mocking sound, like we were both in on the same private joke, but I was the punchline. I could feel it happening inside me, the shift, that internal tightrope snapping between silence and reaction. Not quite rage, not yet, but a firm, growing awareness that being quiet wasn't noble. It was costly. And still, I said nothing. Not yet. Because I still believed silence would protect me, right up until he lifted the cup. The motion was so casual, so deliberate, that for a heartbeat, it didn't register as real. I saw his arm move, saw the cup tilt, but my brain lagged behind, as if refusing to believe it was actually happening. Then the cola spilled. Not a splash, not an accident. It poured, like he meant every drop to land exactly where it did, across the center of my chest. The ice hit first, then the syrupy liquid, dark and cold, soaking through the layers of my white coat. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I didn't even breathe. Time fractured into sharp, floating moments. The sound came next. The hollow plastic of the empty cup hitting the tile as he let it drop with a flick of his fingers. A few drops landed on the floor, spreading in thin, sticky circles near my shoes. Silence spread wider than the mess. The conversations in the lobby, what little chatter had continued during his outburst, went dead. Phones were no longer ringing. Monitors no longer beeped. Even the air felt still. People stopped moving, mid-step, mid-sentence, mid-breath. I looked down slowly. The stain spread like a bruise on the coat I'd worn for years. Familiar, dependable. Something I'd always associated with dignity. Now it was ruined, marked, publicly and deliberately. My brother didn't apologize. He didn't act surprised. He smirked. I guess you should be more careful, he said, just loud enough for those around us to hear. Wouldn't want to show up to rounds looking like a mess. His words weren't the worst part. It was the tone, the lightness of it, the mockery tucked behind the fake concern. Like he'd done me a favor. Like this was some kind of inside joke I just didn't know how to take. I stood still. Everything in me wanted to move, wipe it off, turn away, say something. But my feet stayed rooted, my arms hung at my sides. Cold soda clung to my shirt underneath, and I became aware of the chill crawling slowly across my ribs. Around us, no one stepped forward. No one said a word. I saw familiar faces, nurses I'd worked with for years, residents who looked up to me, even an attending physician leaning against the far wall. All of them stared, some with pity, some with curiosity, but none with intervention. People looked away when I caught their eye. Even the security guard, stationed just feet away, didn't move. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, then pretended to check something on his phone. And that silence, that perfect, suffocating stillness, somehow made the humiliation worse. Not one person stepped between us. Not one person asked if I was okay. Their stillness said it all. He outranked you. Not by title, not by merit, but by noise, by shamelessness. Inside me, something gave way. For years, I'd survived by staying quiet, by letting things go, by assuming people could see the difference between arrogance and integrity. But at that moment, standing there in soaked clothes while my brother smirked like a child who just won a schoolyard bet, that belief cracked. The white coat had always meant something to me. I'd earned it, protected it, even relied on it to remind myself who I was when I wasn't sure. Now it was drenched, not just with soda, but with something uglier. And still, I didn't move. I didn't yell. I didn't grab his arm or raise my voice. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to disappear either. My brother laughed softly, brushing a drop of soda off his own sleeve like it was a joke that got a little out of hand. "Hey," he said, leaning in a little, voice too casual. "Relax. Don't be so uptight. It's just a drink." Then he looked around at the others, making sure they saw how lightly he was taking it, how little it meant to him. That was his mistake. He mistook my silence for surrender. He thought not reacting meant weakness. He didn't understand that silence is only strength when it protects something. And right then, it wasn't protecting anything at all. Not my dignity, not my work, not the people watching, and certainly not the man I used to be. I felt it rising, slow and cold at first, then sharper. Not rage. Not the kind of fire he expected. It was something more precise, more focused. I knew right then I was standing at a point I couldn't back away from. If I lashed out, I'd be labeled unprofessional, the angry brother, the emotional man in the coat. But if I stayed quiet forever, I'd lose more than my pride. I'd lose myself. He shifted his weight, already moving on in his head, satisfied. I watched his fingers tap his phone like he had somewhere better to be, and then I made my decision. I didn't raise my voice. I reached for my phone. My fingers didn't tremble when I unlocked the phone. That surprised me. There was no heat behind my movements, no bitterness, no show. Just the weight of something long overdue sliding into place. He expected rage, maybe a shove. He expected the kind of response that would let him twist the story later, make me the unstable one. But I gave him silence, not empty silence, not the silence of retreat. This was intention. I found her name quickly. I had it saved, buried down in the favorites list where no one ever looked. Not because I was hiding it, but because I never thought I'd need it. Not like this. I tapped the call button and turned on speaker. Not a word to him. Not a glance. I simply stood there, wet white coat clinging to my chest, cola still dripping from the edge of my collar. His smirk hadn't faded yet. In fact, I think it grew sharper when he saw the phone. "Really?" he said. "What's this, gonna cry to HR now? Or maybe call security? Come on, little brother. It was just a joke. Lighten up." A few nurses glanced over their shoulders. No one laughed. He looked around. "You all know me, right? I mean, my wife runs this place. You think this guy's got more pull than I do?" Someone coughed. Another person shifted their weight from one foot to the other. The kind of silence that used to feel awkward now felt electric, heavy. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. He crossed his arms. "You're being dramatic," he muttered. "She's probably in a meeting anyway. You know how she is, always busy managing the place." I kept my eyes on the screen. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The 4th ring echoed louder than the rest. Then a pause. Click. "Hello?" Her voice came through the speaker, clear, professional, and unsuspecting. "Hi, Emma," I said. Calm, even. She froze on the other end. I could feel it through the phone. "Hey," she said, slower now. "What's going on?" I kept my gaze on the marble floor, on the spreading brown stain. "I'm in the lobby. Just wanted to let you know your husband's here. He just poured a full cup of cola on my coat." There was a breath, then silence. The kind that doesn't ask for clarification. The kind that knows exactly what was just said and what it meant. Across from me, my brother's face shifted. The confidence, so loud just seconds ago, blinked once, then twice. He opened his mouth, maybe to deny it, maybe to spin it, but nothing came out. The lobby didn't move. No one spoke. Emma's voice, now sharper, more direct. "I'll be right there." Click. He let out a nervous laugh. "Okay, what was that? Some little act between you two? Trying to make me look bad?" Still, I didn't answer. That's what made him sweat. People expected shouting. They were waiting for the pushback, the drama, the scene. Instead, they got stillness. Measured, deliberate stillness. And in that stillness, something shifted. The looks people gave him weren't confusion anymore. They were calculation, distance. He hated that more than any insult I could have thrown. He reached for his phone now, probably texting her, probably trying to get ahead of whatever she might say when she walked in. His thumb moved fast, too fast. My coat had stopped dripping. The stain was still growing, slowly seeping down, edge by edge, but I didn't move to wipe it. Every inch of it told the story already. A few interns moved quietly toward the hallway, pretending to check clipboards they hadn't been holding before. A doctor across the lobby stared straight ahead, as if locking his gaze somewhere safer. One of the security guards, a quiet older man named Ralph, stepped into view. Not close, just enough to observe. No one told him to. I stood with my arms at my sides. I knew how this worked now. It wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about yelling louder than him. It was about letting the truth walk in on its own, on speakerphone, under hospital lights, in front of everyone who had spent too long looking away. And she was coming. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. When the call finally connected, no one in that lobby breathed. There was a beat of silence after the call ended. 1, 2, 3 seconds where no one dared speak, shift, or even cough. And then, footsteps, measured, unhurried. The click of heels on polished tile echoing from the far hallway, each step louder than the last, though she wasn't rushing. Emma never rushed. She walked like someone who knew exactly where she was going. And why? The entire lobby turned into a still photograph. Phones weren't lifted. Conversations didn't resume. No one dared move until she appeared. And when she did, she didn't scan the room. She looked straight at me. Not him. Not the spill. Not the floor. Me. Her face was composed, almost too composed. But I knew that face. I knew the subtle lift in her eyebrows that meant she'd registered something unexpected. I saw the shift happen. Microseconds of hesitation behind her calm. She looked at the stain, looked back at me, and something in her expression cracked, Just for a moment. I didn't look away. My brother, however, practically puffed up. "Emma," he called too brightly. "There you are. You wouldn't believe the morning we've had." She didn't smile, didn't change pace. He took a step toward her. "I was just explaining to everyone how, well, you're the one running this place. Thought I'd stop by, say hi, you know." There was a pause. Not from her, she still walked, straight and slow, but from everyone else, as if the air had thickened with something unsaid. She stopped a few feet in front of me. Her eyes finally shifted to him. Cold, controlled. She didn't answer him. Instead, she looked again at my coat. The stain had dried in parts, darkening the fabric. Her gaze lingered there. Not long, but long enough that everyone watching knew she saw it and understood it. And in that moment, he began to shrink, not physically, but something in him retreated. His hands twitched. His smile thinned. "Babe," he said, softer now. "You okay?" She didn't respond. He laughed nervously. "Look, it was just a little mess. Brothers, you know, always getting into something." Still nothing. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She finally turned fully toward him, and I saw her jaw tighten. Barely. But it was there. That crack, tiny but undeniable, in the mask she wore so well. "You came here," she said finally, "and poured a drink on his coat?" Her voice was level, too level. The kind people only used when every other emotion had been stuffed deep down. He blinked. "It was a joke. Come on, Em. You know I wouldn't." "You did it in front of your colleagues," she said, voice sharp now. "In front of patients. In my hospital." That last word hit hard. She didn't raise her volume, but it echoed. He looked around. No one moved to help him. Even the nurse behind the desk had stepped away, pretending to review files she clearly wasn't reading. Emma, I didn't mean." Her gaze snapped to him. "Stop." He froze. And in that instant, I saw it. The first real fracture. Not between them, but inside him. The realization that the safety net he thought was his had threads he never saw coming undone. She turned to me, and what I saw in her eyes wasn't pride, it wasn't loyalty either. It was regret, not just for what he did, but for everything before this moment. Every conversation ignored, every unspoken thing that now stood between us. I wanted to say something, to ease it. That part of me, the old reflex, still lingered. The one that wanted to keep peace, even in ruins. But I didn't, because some silences don't need filling. They need witnessing. She looked at my coat one last time, then back at me. And when she turned to face him again, her hands clenched at her sides. He tried to smile. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." She stared at him. "You brought a lie into my house," she said, and then tried to wear it like a badge. His mouth opened, then closed, and just like that, everything shifted. The center of the room no longer belonged to him. It never had. But now, everyone could see it. She looked at me, then at him, and whispered words that stopped time. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. What she whispered carried farther than any shout ever could. "He's not my husband," she said, "and he has no authority here." The words were soft, almost careful, but they landed like a dropped plate in a quiet room. Sharp, final, impossible to ignore. For a moment, nothing happened. No gasp, no outcry. Just a collective pause, as if the lobby itself had to recalibrate around a truth it hadn't been prepared to hold. Then the reactions came. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in pieces. A ripple of murmurs. A few heads turning toward my brother with a different kind of attention now. Not curiosity anymore. Judgment, assessment, distance. Two administrators near the elevators stepped closer, their posture alert but restrained. A senior nurse folded her arms, eyes narrowing slightly as she looked from my brother to Emma and back again. Someone behind the desk quietly picked up the phone, not speaking into it yet, just ready. My brother laughed, too loud, too fast. "That's not what you told me," he said. "You said—" She cut him off. "I told you nothing that gave you permission to do this." He shook his head, hands moving as if he could wave the moment away. "You're twisting it. You know what I meant. I was just explaining—" "No," she said, firmer now. "You were lying. That word did it." His face changed. The color drained first, then rushed back unevenly. He straightened his shoulders, lifted his chin, tried to reclaim the space with volume. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You're all overreacting. He baited me. He's always been jealous." I watched him unravel with a strange calm. Every sentence he added only tightened the room against him. People didn't flinch when he raised his voice. They leaned away. A subtle thing, but unmistakable. Emma didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She didn't defend me either. She simply stood there, eyes fixed on the floor for a moment, as if she were finally seeing the cost of every silence that came before this one. When she looked up again, she didn't look at him. She looked past him. "Security," she said quietly. The word carried weight. Ralph, the older guard who'd been hovering near the edge of the lobby, stepped forward without being told again. Another staff member joined him, then another. Not aggressive, just present. "You can't do this," my brother barked. "I didn't do anything wrong." Ralph's voice was calm. "Sir, you need to leave the premises." My brother scoffed. "You can't be serious." "I am," Ralph replied. "Now." Someone approached me then, a resident I'd mentored years ago. She held out a folded towel, her expression gentle. "Here," she said softly. "You can clean up." I shook my head. She hesitated. "We've got a jacket in the office if you—" "No," I said. My voice surprised me, steady, clear. "I'm fine." I stayed where I was. The coat stayed stained. I wasn't hiding it anymore. Emma glanced at me then, her eyes filling, not with tears, but with something heavier. Regret, maybe. Or the realization that some things don't mend once they've been broken in public. My brother was still talking, his words tumbling over each other now. Excuses, accusations, half-truths thrown like lifelines he kept missing. No one responded. That was when he understood. The authority he thought he'd borrowed had evaporated. The room didn't belong to him. It never had. And now, it was actively rejecting him. As Ralph guided him toward the exit, my brother twisted back toward me. "You think you've won?" he said. "You think this is over?" I met his eyes. For the first time that day, I spoke without restraint. "I think you showed everyone exactly who you are," I said, and I didn't have to say a word. He laughed once, sharp and hollow, before being escorted out. The doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. The lobby exhaled. Emma stayed where she was, her hands clenched at her sides. "I'm sorry," she said finally. Not to the room, to me. I nodded. Not because everything was forgiven, but because the truth was finally standing in the open, and pretending otherwise would cost too much. I knew what this meant. My marriage would never go back to what it was. My family would fracture in ways we couldn't predict. Holidays would be quieter, conversations more careful. Some bridges would never be rebuilt, but silence had already taken enough from me. As the staff slowly returned to their routines and the lobby regained its rhythm, I realized something else too. I thought it was over, but that's when he decided to strike back. The quiet didn't last. Not 5 minutes after he was walked out, I noticed the shift, not in the lobby, but in the air around me, in the way people stopped meeting my eyes, in the 2 quick glances exchanged when I passed a nurse's station, in the fact that my next scheduled patient never showed, no call, no message. By lunch, the rumors had taken root. They were small at first. I heard one outside the staff lounge, 2 junior techs whispering near the vending machine. I heard it wasn't really his patient to begin with, one said, and something about misconduct? The second shook her head. Just what I heard, don't know the full story. By mid-afternoon, my inbox started filling, not with support, with questions, subtle ones. Clarifying protocol, wanting context, just double-checking the timeline on last week's rounds. All from supervisors who normally wouldn't micromanage. None of them used the word investigation, but the tone was unmistakable. That's when I understood. He wasn't done. The exit was never the end. It was the beginning of a different attack. He was trying to poison the one thing I had left intact, my reputation. My hands trembled a little when I opened the 4th email. HR asking for a brief chat. No subject line, no details. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, remembering the look on his face as Ralph had guided him out. He'd walked quietly, but his eyes had promised something loud. Retaliation. Of course, this wasn't new behavior. He'd been doing it in smaller ways since we were kids. When called out, he never took the blow directly. He found a way to make you pay for it sideways, broke your favorite toy, blamed you for something you didn't do, got others to doubt you just enough to make you question yourself. I should have expected this, but knowing it didn't make the reality easier. I pressed my palms flat against the desk, trying to still the buzzing in my chest. For the first time since the cola hit my coat, I felt something close to regret creep in. Not because I thought I'd done the wrong thing, but because I underestimated how much more he'd take with him on his way down. I looked out the window. The parking lot blurred behind the tint. My reflection looked older than it had that morning. Not tired, weathered. I wondered if I just kept my mouth shut, if I'd let him spill the drink and laugh it off, if I'd swallowed it all like I always had, would I still have my standing, my marriage, my peace? That question didn't sit long. Not because I had the answer, but because someone knocked lightly on my door. A resident, James, mid-20s, quiet, bright, careful with his words, stood there holding a clipboard. He didn't meet my eyes. I just wanted to check something with you, he said. But his tone didn't match the question he asked. And when he left, I caught sight of another attending speaking to one of the senior staff in the hallway. She looked at James, then glanced at me. And I knew. He wasn't just coming for me. He was using the moment, his fall, to muddy the water around anyone who'd ever stood near me. James, who I'd mentored. Sarah, who'd filed a complaint about my brother's behavior last year. Even staff who had nothing to do with the drama. They were collateral. That was the moment I stopped reacting. I closed the blinds, sat back down, picked up my phone, not to vent, but to begin tracking. Calls, emails, dates, times. I wasn't going to fight back with outrage. I was going to build the timeline he didn't think I'd be patient enough to assemble. I reached out to compliance, not HR, asked precise questions. What's the correct protocol for addressing reputation damage initiated by an external party with familial ties? Is there precedent for institutional intervention when staff are targeted through informal channels? No emotion, just facts. Then I found the messages he hadn't deleted, screenshots from weeks ago, him overstepping, telling nurses to redirect patients, using my name to authorize procedures I hadn't signed off on. I'd ignored them back then, thinking it would pass. Now, they were proof. Still, even as I built the case, I couldn't stop the damage already done. That evening, while walking to my car, I overheard two staff members I barely knew. "Maybe he's just not stable right now," one said. "I mean, look at everything that happened. His wife showed up. He stood there with soda down his front." The other shrugged. "Could be a breakdown." I didn't correct them, didn't even slow down. But it cut. Deeper than I expected. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table for hours, my laptop open, the room silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Emma hadn't come home, not yet. Maybe not at all. I was alone, but not adrift. That silence, once a wound, had turned into something else, a space, a clearing. And in it, I saw something I hadn't before. I remembered being James's age, watching someone powerful twist the narrative and no one stepping in. I remembered thinking, if I ever have a voice, I'll use it better than that. Now was the time to prove it. He'd made one final mistake. The next morning, it hit my desk, an anonymous complaint filed against me, signed by a concerned colleague. The content was sloppy, the timeline inconsistent, claims easily disprovable with existing documentation. It had his fingerprints all over it. And I smiled, not because it was funny, but because he thought this would scare me back into silence. He thought I was cornered. So I let him believe it. I didn't post, didn't email, didn't defend myself in whispers by the coffee machine. Instead, I waited. Not because I was afraid, but because I understood something he never had. When the truth is strong enough, it doesn't need to yell. Let the rumors spread. Let the story twist in his hands. Every lie he told built pressure, and pressure, I knew, only meant one thing. Sooner or later, someone would demand answers. Not gossip, not hearsay, evidence. That moment came 3 days later. I received a formal calendar invite titled Concerns Regarding Professional Conduct, Internal Review Panel. The room was neutral, windowless, lit by ceiling panels, the kind of lighting that made everyone look tired. Across from me sat two hospital administrators, someone from legal, and the head of HR. At the far end of the table, uninvited but present, was him, my brother, smug in posture, arms folded like a man ready to win again. I sat with my hands clasped loosely in front of me. I didn't interrupt. I didn't lean in. I didn't need to. The meeting began with protocol. The reason we were there, the nature of the complaint, the importance of maintaining neutrality. Then he spoke. His voice carried, measured, confident, polished with just enough concern to sound credible. He said I'd been unstable, unprofessional, that I'd intimidated junior staff, acted erratically, possibly even manipulated patient records. He offered no documentation, but he didn't need it, did he? His tone did the heavy lifting. It always had. And for a few minutes, I saw their eyes shift. That uncomfortable, cautious neutrality that often leans toward the louder voice in the room. Then they turned to me. "Do you have a response?" I nodded once, reached into my folder. "I don't have a statement," I said quietly. "Just these." One by one, I placed the documents on the table. Screenshots of messages he sent under my name. Time-stamped logs showing discrepancies in his claimed access. A statement from a nurse he pressured. An internal memo he doctored, his version beside the original. I didn't speak over the silence, didn't explain. The evidence did the work. You could hear the shift. The head of HR leaned forward. Legal picked up a page and examined the metadata. One of the administrators cleared her throat but said nothing. My brother's arms slowly unfolded. He reached for one of the documents, then hesitated. "This doesn't mean anything," he tried. His voice was louder now, defensive. "You edited internal records," the administrator replied, her tone tight. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's falsification." His mouth opened, then shut again. And just like that, the center of the room shifted again. Away from me, toward him. What followed wasn't dramatic. No raised voices, no security called, just questions. But this time, they weren't mine to answer. His confidence cracked. He denied what the logs made clear. He tried to pivot, tried to reframe, but the room had changed. They weren't listening to his tone anymore. They were looking at facts. And facts, I've learned, are patient. They wait until the room is quiet enough to be heard. Eventually, the administrators asked him to step outside, not me. When he was gone, they turned back to me, not with apology, but with something more valuable. Clarity. "I believe we've seen what we need," one of them said. And that was that. No applause, no vindication speech, just a quiet recognition of what had always been true. I left the room with my file in hand, walking slowly past the receptionist who now avoided eye contact, past the hallway where James waited, uncertainty written on his face. I gave him a nod. A small one, but he understood. Back in my office, I closed the door and sat in the chair that, until recently, had started to feel like a stranger's. I breathed. Not triumph, not relief. Something closer to stillness. This wasn't winning, not really. I'd lost too much for that word to fit. My marriage, parts of my career, some trust that may never fully return. But it was over. The part where I had to defend the truth. The part where silence served someone else's comfort. I looked at the white coat still hanging on the hook, still stained. I hadn't washed it yet, and now I knew I wouldn't. It was never about removing the mark. It was about refusing to be ashamed of it. When it was over, everyone expected me to say something. But I was already walking away. The hallway behind me was quiet. Carpeted steps, muted walls, no one calling after me, no hand on my shoulder, no thank you, no final words from anyone in that room. Just the sound of my own footsteps, steady and calm, echoing in the space I no longer needed to belong to. I stepped out into the late afternoon sun, blinking a little against the light. It was warmer than I expected. The wind had softened. There was nothing triumphant in the moment. No swelling music, no epiphany. Just breath. Mine. Even grounded. I didn't turn back. Not out of pride or anger, but because I'd spent too much of my life facing rooms that demanded my silence. Walking away was the only thing left to do that still felt like mine. In the days that followed, the pieces fell where they would. There were meetings, quiet ones, formal statements, policies reviewed, the kinds of consequences that unfold in real time but take weeks to feel complete. He was suspended pending investigation. Eventually, he resigned. No press release, no parade, just a quiet line in the internal memo. Dr. Eric Stone has elected to pursue opportunities outside the institution. Family? That unraveled too. My mother called once, asking if it was true. I told her what I could. She didn't say much after that. My father didn't call at all. And my marriage, well, some endings don't arrive with slammed doors or final fights. They just thin out. One evening becomes two. Words dry up. Apologies wear thin. And then there's nothing left to fight for. Not because no one cares, but because what mattered had already bled out long before. We spoke a few times, brief, polite, necessary. Her voice didn't shake anymore. Mine didn't either. We didn't blame each other. Not aloud. But I think we both understood, without saying it, that some fractures aren't healed by truth. They're just made visible by it. I signed the divorce papers a month later. She sent them through her attorney. No note. I didn't expect one. That night, I returned to the house alone. The hallway still smelled faintly of her perfume. Some frames were gone from the walls. The bedroom was half empty. The silence wasn't hostile. It was just honest. I walked past the kitchen, into the small laundry room where my white coat had been hanging all this time, still unwashed, still carrying that faint, round stain from the cola. A mark that wasn't just a mess, but a moment, a turning point. For a while, I just looked at it. That coat had seen years of work, of exhaustion, of quiet compromise. It had been worn by a man who tolerated more than he admitted, for the sake of peace, of image, of family. But now I lifted it from the hook, folded it carefully, not as a surrender, but as a keepsake, a reminder of what not to carry again. I placed it in a box on the top shelf of the closet, not thrown away, not hidden, just complete. Later that week, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Same face, a little more tired, a little less polished. But there was something else, something I hadn't seen in a while. Presence, not louder, not harder, just here, me. Not trying to shrink or smooth things over or be the acceptable version someone else wanted. I think that's the part most people don't talk about. How invisibility doesn't come all at once. It comes slowly, in inches, in it's not worth it, and maybe next time. Until one day, you wake up and don't recognize the man brushing his teeth. But I did now, and that was enough. To anyone listening, if you are, I want to say this gently. I know some of you have been here. Maybe not this exact story, but close. Different faces, different lies, different rooms. But the feeling, the pull to shrink yourself, to stay silent, to protect the people who'd never do the same for you, that's familiar. I won't offer you advice. I don't believe in one-size-fits-all endings. But I will say, there is dignity in deciding who gets to carry your name, your story, your silence. And who doesn't? That coat, it didn't make me who I was. And silence didn't protect me. I didn't lose my dignity that day. I finally stopped lending it to people who never deserved it.